I was going to talk about today. The first thing I wanted to do is acknowledge this really beautiful, strong place. And in my life, I look for people who sparkle. And when I see people who sparkle, and we all instinctively know when someone sparkles. There's a light around them. There's an energy around them. And I look for those people and I bring them into my life. So when I come to someplace new, and someplace in our tribe, this was a major village site. Concrete was not always named Concrete. There was a Skagit village here, and not far from here. It was the home of the biggest longhouse in, I think, probably maybe Washington State. 1,000 feet long. It's right alongside the Baker River. And 1,000 feet long and probably, 75 feet wide. Huge. It housed a huge village, and everyone had sections of that, And so it really defined the area here. And there was villages like this all up and down the Skagit River, all the way to the Nookashamps, all the way to Whidbey Island, where the lower Skagits were, the Swinomish. Originally, there was no such thing as Skagits. There were all these villages that comprised the Skagit people, and were forced together to become the Skagits by the politics of the United States government. So we have one or two things we can talk about today. Normally I have a lot longer to talk. Everyone's tired, hungry, everything else. 7 years ago, I died. And I don't mean figuratively speaking, I mean exactly, I died. And when I died, I was gone for 5 days. And my 5 days were spent in heaven. And that seems like it's a hard stretch for you to understand. But I was in a coma, I had cardiac arrest, and towards the end of at the third day, what they do, there's a procedure they do where they freeze you, bring you to the hospital. My heart has started and stopped so many times. But they freeze you, they cool your body temperature down. And then they go ahead and give you 12 hours to wake up after 72 hours, and they start slowly warming your body up. And after 12 hours, they do an assessment, to see if you're conscious anymore or cognizant, or if you actually come back to consciousness. And they were getting no responses. And they do little things, it's kind of icky, think about it. They poke your toe with a needle, and then they shine a light in your eye, and then they actually poke your eyeball with a needle, But all that was no response, and so somehow they got my body onto a gurney and took me down for an MRI, and I had 3% brain activity, which was just enough to keep my body functioning. And so when I got back to the room, the doctor comes in and there's a little piece of paper to read off, your loved ones in a coma, they're not coming out of it, they're going to be a long-term care term if they ever come back, it'll bankrupt the family, they're never going to have a conversation with a loved one again. It's over. Recommend pulling the plug. And so my nephew was in there, Kay-san, my nephew, and he said, well, that ain't happening, Uncle's in heaven hanging out with Joe, my son who had died years ago, and he says hanging out with Joe, and he'll come back when he wants to. And that was the final word. There's no one pulling nothing. Well, very few people survive after the 12 hours. And then the 24 hours later, no one survives. 48 hours later, there's no history of anybody ever surviving. And 72 hours later, I came back. And so when I came back, my girlfriend was in the corner of the room. And anybody knows, but ICU, they're really small rooms, And all this gear around, all this monitoring stuff. And she's sitting there in the corner, which was probably about 8 feet away from my end of my bed. And I was standing at the end of the bed. And to my left, in front of me, was my great-great-grandfather. And to my right was my son, Joseph. And she's, a very well-educated woman. She's a physician. She's looking, and she goes, I can see his body in bed, and he's standing there, there's 2 people in the room, And she's watching this whole thing take place. And I was arguing with my grandfather. I said, I'm not staying here. I'm going back with you. I want to go back with you. He said, no, you got to stay here. I said, no, man, I don't want to be here. I want to go back with you. No, you have to stay. I turned to my son and said, Joe, I'm not staying here. I'm going to go back with you. He said, no, Dad, you have to stay. You have to stay. I said, no, I don't want to stay. And they disappeared. And then my soul fell back into my body. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was screaming bloody murder. But they had hold down my throat. It was terrible. And they had me strapped down because apparently I tried to get free, And my wrists were all bruised up, and I eventually came back. And their prognosis was, I get used to the idea of a wheelchair, you're never going to walk again. And I had lost most of my memory, lost years of memory, and some will never return. And I was laying there thinking, when you fall down, especially when you get older, when you're younger, you don't worry about that. Kids just fall down, they go, boom. Us old people, we fall down, we go, okay, don't move me, don't touch me, And you do an assessment, you go, okay, this moves, that moves. Well, I was doing that assessment, and I got to my hair, and I thought, even my hair hurts. I didn't know hair could hurt, but yeah, hair can hurt. I thought, how does the hair hurt? And then I remembered something my father had told me when I was a young man, like 8 years old, and why parents tell their kids certain things, I don't understand. But my father said, if you ever find yourself in a position where you can only move your little finger, you exercise that little finger as hard as you can. And so here I am laying in bed, I realized the only thing I can move is my little finger. It really came true. So there I was, man, moving my little finger as hard as I could, And then there was people coming in, processions of people. There were several hundred people there at the hospital, and they were all looking down on me and being very pitiful. And I don't like pity. There's no use for it. There's no redeeming value in my life for pity. And they're all being very pitiful, and it made me furious that they were being pitiful over me. And then they were saying things like, "Oh, you came back, so obviously God had a plan for you, and you've still got work to do." And I just left God. My 5 days were spent in heaven, where I had conversations with God. It's interesting, beautiful conversations. All the replies were quite short, but I knew we had no plan. God had no plan. We were clear about that. That it's up to ourselves to find our strength and the gifts in ourselves and go out to help other people. There's no grand plan for me. I thought, I got to make it up again. I got to find out what I want to do. And I thought, well, I can do anything I want to do. I can go rob banks for a living, I got my ticket punched. I know where I'm going, And I thought, no, I think what I'm going to do is try to change the world, make it a better place. I'm going to do good every day. I'm going to try to do as much good as I can. So I wake up in the morning, every morning, and I think today I'm going to try my hardest to change the world and make it a better place. And every night I go to sleep, lay down, I think I failed. But not once have I ever given myself an excuse to stop trying. Failure does not give you a ticket to stop trying. So what have I done? I've spoken to people all over the world, and every continent in the world over the last several years about this. I've been involved with my art. I'm an artist. I've created some phenomenal, beautiful work. My art is all medicine. I practice native medicine. I've run half marathons, on different parts of the country because I couldn't stand the idea of people being pitiful to me. So I said, hey, they said, how are you doing? I said, well, I just ran a half marathon. Well, I guess you're okay. I said, yeah, just leave me alone. No pity, I don't like pity. And so my work, Kay and I do a lot of public speaking. We try to edify people, share our knowledge and information. There's a very much so a gift from our people. Like people say, well, you know all this great stuff. I said, we're just repeating what we heard. We're not creating anything new. And the reason it resonates with you is because it was told all people all around the world. Everybody's indigenous to the world. There's no one that's not indigenous to the world. Everyone's indigenous to the world. But one grandmother or grandfather quit telling the story. But medicine today teaches you that inside of our DNA, those stories are coded. And when you hear them again, it could be 3 or 4 or 10 generations later, something resonates inside you and you go, that just makes sense to me. I don't know why. I said, but because it's in your DNA. It's scientifically proven. You have memories from generations before. We carry that. So there's some things I'll go over quickly because I know everyone's tired and want to get out of here. But
we're not tired. We can sit here all day.
Someone give me a sign when they've had enough of this, okay? So what happened was when I died, and I found out cardiac arrest is a beautiful way to go because, man, you instantly are gone. It's quicker than you can blink. Before your eyes close, you're gone. So one of the things I found out was how far away heaven is, because I was brought up, in very different worlds. One is the Western world, Catholicism. I've spoken a lot of churches over the years. I was trained to be a Methodist minister. And so I had this idea of Western teachings about where heaven was. Tower of Babel, we talked about that, We have the star child from our people. But when I closed my eyes, I woke up and I was at the gates of heaven. And the one thing I did find out, really important thing and it reinforced a lot of the native teachings, is if everyone put their arm out, I'll show you something we all need to know. And then put your hand about right here. That's how close heaven is all the time. We're never estranged from heaven. God never tried to estrange us from heaven. And the division between this world and that dimension is just a thin ether. And the spirit world, we call it spirit helpers. Catholicism teaches we have guardian angels. We all have names for angels around the world. We have all these great names for angels. But they can pass back and forth between that through the ether to intervene on our behalf, to help us out. That's one thing God really good about that promise. He'll make sure that the angels are there to help you. And in our world, we're taught, you don't say something. Don't say, I'm going to go hang out with Kevin this Sunday. And then I call Kevin at 9 o'clock. Say, I don't feel like coming. We don't get to do that in our world. When we say we're going to be there, we know all the angels, spirit helpers, start paving the way for our journey, whatever we outline to do. And if you don't do that, if you don't follow through, there's consequences. You've insulted the spirit world, the angels. You've called out for the help. You've cried wolf. You don't get to change your mind. And so when we say something, we understand that along with it, all the angels start working the way. Kevin made a public declaration about his commitment to the people in the community.
all the angels involved in Kevin's life are working all the time to support his goal because they're good goals. So anyway, while I was sitting there in heaven, and I said I wanted to have a conversation with God. I was running around with my son, my great-great-grandfather. I could see my mother and all my loved ones off in the distance, and I got to see all these souls there, really beautiful. And what is heaven like? And I'm trying to describe the feeling what heaven is like. And if you take every moment in your life, you have that euphoric feeling of excitement and happiness. You know, the first birthday party, your first kiss. You know, all the excitement, fun times in your life, all the exuberant times, you just feel that good feeling inside of you. At the end of our life, we can probably put together 5 or 6 or 7 minutes of that if we've led a long life. That feeling is what you feel all the time in heaven, all the time, without any anxiety. There's no anxiety. You know, you constantly feel that tremendous state of happiness and content without any anxiety. You're given a great amount of knowledge, whatever it is to satisfy your anxieties. There's no such thing as time in heaven. Time doesn't exist, and God was very clear about that. You know, time was created for experience on earth. And in heaven, there's no such thing as time. So my time on heaven was measured on earth as 5 days. You know, the book's very small. I wrote a book about it. It's very short, not very long. But there's a couple of things that were made very clear to me. Is like, why are we here? You know, I've heard great sermons on this, God, from scientists and religious leaders both. The purpose of humanity on earth. And you've all heard it, so I'm just going to jump right to the answer. To have fun. That's the reason the earth was created. For us to enjoy and have fun. Don't hurt anybody, but have fun. Some things I'll go over real quick. When a soul wants to go to heaven or go to earth, they approach God. And God and I were having this conversation, and this lady goes and said, I want to go back to earth. I thought, well, that's rude of her to interrupt us. There was no such thing as interrupting God. Because God could very well carry on 2 conversations at once. That was like very simple. And so I watched, and there was a agreement we all made. You know, I've created the whole earth, flora, and fauna for you. All this beautiful things for you to enjoy. Go enjoy. You'll be given at least 1 gift, if not more. With these gifts, you're to help other people. I'll send guardian angels and spirit helpers to help you make your decisions. Don't hurt anybody. The last thing, then the soul picks a mother. You know, I don't know. And in my book and the stories, I don't speculate on a lot of things when I'm recounting the events. I just want to say exactly what I saw. I don't know about the father. I did see them pick a mother. And so the soul picks a mother. And then as soon as the baby leaves the womb, the soul can go from heaven into the baby. No, not till then. And then God said, watch. And there was this 2 lights we were watching, like this. 2 lights. Each one represented a soul and a light. And this first one came back. And the second one continued on and on and on. And that came back. The first soul lived 10 seconds. The second soul lived 100 years. It was just that much time. It's like, and yet we got a perspective on what heaven's about, what time's about, how we apply things, you know. And the experience of earth is to enjoy God's creation. supposed to enjoy it. That's our whole job here, to have fun. And I was talking to a bunch of Lutheran ministers. I said, got 100 Lutheran ministers in one room, okay? Okay, so tell them about this day. I said, imagine watching 20 or 30 kids, and they're under your charge. And you say, finally, they're getting under your feet. Say, let's go outside and play. So you send them all outside. We've all had kids who are responsible for like that. Everyone has. And all of a sudden, it gets quiet. And everyone knows what that means when you got 20 or 30 kids quiet, and there's something going on. So I said, you open the door and you look out in the yard, and there they are, mowing the lawn, weeding the flower beds, picking up the trash. And he's going, hey kids, you're supposed to be playing. What are you doing? And I said, that's what God's, when he looks at us, going, you're supposed to be enjoying yourself. We have all these gifts. We're all good at something, really good at something. And with those gifts, you're supposed to help other people. And the nice thing in the native world, this is exactly what we're taught there. We're given gifts, things that we are good about, that makes us special. And with those gifts, we're supposed to help other people. Gifts are supposed to be given away to help. Your company here, the first gift you give in any social setting is your company. That's the most precious gift you can give, is your company. So anyway, I watched all that, and we can talk about it later if you want to, but I asked questions about heaven and hell. Anybody know about what God said about heaven and hell? Anybody want to know about hell? Show of hands. Anybody want to know about hell?
So I've always heard that it's just separation from God is kind of the definition.
So I said, what about hell? I was asking all these questions about love and marriage and time and everything, and he says, there is no hell. He said, everybody goes home. Everybody comes home. I think we're all born in heaven. We're not born on earth. We're born in heaven. And when we begin to understand that we're eternal creatures, from the point where God created us and our experience as a soul, one of the things we do is come to earth and experience life as an individual, as a human, and we go back home. And the native world, it was a full understanding of that. We don't have a word for die, for example. We don't have a word for death. We also don't have a word for love either. And death, we say going home. Someone's going home. They're going home. That's where that's our home. That's where we were born. And we miss each person that leaves us really deeply. But I spoke to a lot of funerals. I said, on the other side right now, there's this huge celebration going on. I'm welcoming this individual back home. And yes, we may miss them, but we will be with them again. So we don't have that conflict in the Western world of estrangement, where the barrier between our world and God's world is impermeable. We're taught every day we walk in that world, and it's a very permeable ether. And the angels are always trying to give us instincts and signs to help us, give us little motivations. And you'll say, a young lady came to me and she wanted me to teach her how to be a medicine woman. I said, fine. First thing I want you to do is go back over the last 10 years, and everything bad happened to you, I want you to think about that and think what happened before that happened. I said, you always have been warned in your heart and soul that you shouldn't do this, you should go this way. We all have that. In the Western world, we call it a gut instinct. What the native world teaches is that that's your soul talking to you. And your soul can see forward, back in time, everything, and see the future and the past. And says, okay, you should go over here. Slow down, stay at a stop sign just a little longer. We've all had that experience. You think, I don't know why I'm slowing down here, and boom, a car comes in front of you. That's why. when I was in college, I had a job, and my job was to bring the students to grocery shopping and different events. I got the van and 14 passenger van. And one night, all these students, appropriate number of students, asked me to bring them to the shopping center as in college to do the toiletries and stuff. So can't say no, they got the 12 students. So I got there and they went down Cerritos Road over to St. Francis Road, way over there to Coronado Mall. And it was like 4 miles, 5 miles around. Or you can cut straight through and go through all the neighborhoods. And it's like stop signs all the time. So I got through and I was tired. They all got back in there trying to crowd 12 college students. On a schedule. Finally got back in the van and I said, I'm gonna go straight back. So I went straight back to the school. And in Santa Fe, they have these big high walls everywhere around the outside of their property. They're big giant adobe walls, and you can't even see around the corners. It's like big canyons everywhere. And I came up with this one intersection, and I was told, stop. Stop. And it's funny because you have 12 college students just going at it, carrying on, and as soon as I stopped, they instantly knew there was no stop sign. They all screaming, what are you stopping for? There's no stop sign. Ah! I didn't say a thing. And about that time, this big old Bonneville went flying through the intersection, did about 40, 50 miles an hour. And you couldn't see around the corner. And they all just froze. I said, that's why. I could see that car coming. I was told, stop here. Those 12 students went on to change the course of art in America. Some of the most famous individuals in the world of art were in that vehicle. Great names, changed color, composition, poetry. Their students are teaching now. Their students are teaching now. So I listen to here. And we all have that. It's not unique to me at all. Everything I say about me is every one of you individuals carries the same information, same ability. So anyway, I got a lot of questions answered. And I was surprised at how short the answers were.
Yep or nope?
No, there was explanations. I mean, how many have heard of sermons and conversations, political conversations on LGBTQ stances? Everyone's heard of it. You can't turn on TV or read anything without long dissertations. Oh my God, jeez. So I said, when I was talking to God, I asked all these questions. I said, what about same-sex marriages? This is something very important in my life. When I was on the Upper Skagit Tribal Council in 1993, I recognized that we were bringing all these families back to work in the casino in our community and giving them jobs. And a lot of our families had same-sex marriages, same-sex couples. And I said, if we're gonna bring our family back, then we need to make sure they're accommodated and recognized with all the rights and privileges of every other couple. And so I presented for the council, and I argued my point, and that night I got it passed. I was the first one in the country to introduce and pass legislation recognizing same-sex marriages. It's because it's a tradition in our culture. That's not an anomaly. It's something to be expected, and that is called a gift. It's called a gift, and the gift of that disposition is you can see the world in a different view, a different angle, and then their job is to come back and tell you what they saw. It's an obligation. Every gift has an obligation, and to edify you, to help you see the world in a different way. So that was, so I asked God, I said, what about same-sex marriages? Because I thought, this is the answer to all my questions. Is it hurting anybody? I said, no. And it's the only time God turned to me and looked at me, and because all I saw was a beautiful white image, there you have it.
And at the same time, we were looking down at Earth, and I thought, all these conversations going all over the world about the pros and cons of this. And they're killing people in Africa for, for being gay, murdering, wholesale murder. Political lines are drawn in this country because of someone's sexual disposition. Are they hurting anybody? No. There you have it. I thought, if you could just say that to them people down there, just love each other for who you are and the gifts you have, that's just one gift. In this room, there's thousands of gifts. If we listed all the assets or gifts that each one of these people have in this room, it's going to list into the thousands. I know it. We can start making a list up here on the wall, all the gifts we have. So then when I was walking the room today, I was thinking, what's unique about this group of people? Because I knew I was walking in someplace special. And I will make one prophecy about this church. After this week, this church will start growing in influence and population inside your church. And I know that the people here are brought together are all sparkling people. And that light draws light. And light's about power, the power of God. And so when I'm warning you this, not to give you a pat on the back and saying, hey, when it starts coming your way, you gotta accept it. Yes, you can invite your neighbor, that's fine. Come over here, we're working on this project, that's fine. Accepting that is really important. Each one of you all knew that. I'm not saying anything new to anybody here. Everyone has that instinct because your heart's telling you there's something going to happen soon. I'm going to be responsible for it. My neighbor keeps talking to me about this. The gal in the grocery store keeps talking about this. Well, come on over here and we got a project going, And that's how it grows. So the only reason we're here on this earth, I found out, was to enjoy ourselves, help each other. I do a lot of writing, and the writing is always ended with, yes, we are our sisters and brothers keepers. We really are. In my family, in my tribe, we have every reason to be bitter. My family was thrown off the area, their village. Other family members were met at gunpoint right here in town, and their land was taken away from them at gunpoint. 7 miles down the way, the 95th Cavalry met my grandfather in the 1860s and said, either you acquiesce or we're going to go upriver and kill every man, woman, and child. And my grandfather said, fine, I acquiesce. And this general thought he was really did something good. I won a battle without firing a shot. What was the reasoning behind my grandfather saying that? Because he could have been proud. They could have held their own for a while. They would have taken out some soldiers. But he knew that eventually they would have won. And they would have gone and killed every man, woman, and child. They had no problems killing natives at any age. Infants, men, women, children, nothing. But he was thinking, don't worry, my great-grandchildren will be here to continue the fight. So the general thought he won. And my grandfather knew he won, because Kay and I are here today. We have every reason to be bitter, but when we're taught that the world, we're one family. Or there's one family. We're all related to each other. We all are responsible for taking care of each other. There's not much room for bitterness then. I mean, I like all my family. Some of them I don't want to recognize, but then again, we're still stuck with each other. Everyone ever seen the big sculpture downtown Mount Vernon, the big giant totem pole?
Yeah, beautiful.
That's mine, yeah.
Well done.
And so at the presentation, I called the city of Mount Vernon to bring all the politicians together, the whole thing, and big ceremony to it. And so I was talking and I said, we are now one family. And
the new people, my grandfather referred to them as the new people, you know, you're now our family. You're now also holding in trust this beautiful Skagit Valley. And you can hear all the politicians. I said, there's a time for the divisions to end and the controversies to end. And you can hear all the politicians in the crowd gasping. It's so funny because you actually hear them go, you know, because what I called for was political speak, I called for the end to hostilities. And that's when the gas started. And I was the first person in the United States to call for an end to the Indian Wars. And every politician knew that. They knew what I was saying. And I said, we're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. We're stuck with each other. We have one valley. And now it's ours. You're my family. I'm your family. And after we left, a friend of mine came by and said, well, you just gave away the valley. I said, really? Do you think that's what happened? He goes, yeah, you just gave away the valley. I said, so when that guy's walking down the street and he sees some trash alongside the road, he'll pick it up. Because he'll say, hey, someone threw trash on my land. It's mine. No one's going to deface it. It's now everything they see is theirs. You see trash on the ground, you pick it up. You have a choice of hurting something or not hurting something. You don't hurt it. It's my land. Every farmer can tell you have to be very respectful to the land. If you don't, you suffer the consequences of famine. So, and my grandfather gave us some wonderful wise words about understanding the new people and ingratiating, and our culture teaches us that we are one family. And we are responsible for taking care of each other. Everything I saw and learned in heaven, I was walking around going, I'm glad I grew up in the native world because I came down the right side. Yeah. You get to keep your sense of humor in heaven, by the way, also. That's another fun thing, you know. But I was reinforced with all the native teachings. You know. And they're not unique to our tribe, they are unique to the world. Every culture taught the same things. You know. And so if you have any questions about that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. But do know this, I'm going to recognize the responsibility and the gifts of the people in this room to become the example in this community, in this area, for what happens when a handful of people come together for the best interest of the whole community.
Maybe if they have questions, they can talk to you after church.
Yeah, you can do that too. I'm going to get busy here. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you, children. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.